Welcome to Civilian Care Radio, a proud member of the Firearms Radio Network. This show is brought to you by our sponsor tonight, Big Tech's Outdoors. Big Tech's main focus is highly quality tactical EDC gear. They offer 100% risk-free shopping. That means if you change your mind for any reason, they'll refund the full purchase price, shipping costs, and pay for the return shipping. So total risk-free shopping, folks. On top of that, most of their orders ship in 24 hours or less. Some of their items ship for as little as $1.99. They're an FFL Class 3 SOT. They sell suppressors, SBRs, and other NFA items. Check out their website, bigtexoutdoors.com, and please use the code CC Radio for a 15% discount at checkout. And remember, folks, it's free shopping. Folks, our goal and focus of this podcast is to spread the message to everyday people, the importance of the Second Amendment, firearms, safety, education, training, and proper mindset. Remember, folks, you and only you are responsible for the safety and protection of yourself and your loved ones. Our mission statement: gun ownership is your right. Safety and education are your responsibility. We have 3 rules on our podcast, folks. 1 is no cussing, 2 is no drinking, and 3, no discussion of politics, because gun rights and the right to self-protection is a God-given natural right. I'm your host and producer, Baraka James, along with my lovely co-host tonight, Miss Tatiana Whitlock, who is also the director of training at A Girl in a Gun Shooting League at www.agirlinagun.org. Good evening, Tatiana. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing great.
Awesome. Glad to have you. Folks, Alan is off tonight. He's been killing himself again with his job. He literally worked the other day from, I think, 4:30 in the morning, got home at like 9:30 last night. He has a big job ahead of him. He will be back hopefully next week. So without further ado, let me introduce to our great 3 guest co-hosts this evening. First up, Tiffany Johnson, Rangemaster Frontsight Press, lawyer and owner of QP Legal, teacher, personal defense advocate, and instructor at Citizen Safety Academy. Good evening, Tiffany. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Baraka?
I'm doing very well, and I'm glad to see you're not too sweaty from all of the wing pedaling from coming down from heaven. Right? Next, we have Mr. Brian Hill, 4th degree black belt in karate, Japanese jiu-jitsu, 3rd degree black belt in taekwondo, and owner of Complete Combating. Good evening, Mr. Brian Hill. How are you? And you're on mute. And we go next to Mr. Lee Weems, LEO, Chief Deputy Owner of First Person Safety. Good evening, Lee. How are you, sir?
Good evening, and since Tiffany's here, I will officially declare Tiffany Podcast Bingo for tonight, and it's good to see everyone, and see Brian since we couldn't hear him, so
no worries. All right, folks, we are listener-funded radio. You, the listeners and viewers, make the program possible. You can contribute to the show via Patreon for as little as $1 per episode or as much as you like by going to www.patreon.com/CC Radio or clicking the link in our show notes. A huge shout out to our $10 Patreon pledges: Mark B, Young Pei Chang, Greg P, our $5 Patreon pledges: Christopher D, Rob J, CJ, James W, Russ A, Ira S, Rob C, Michael G, Eric B, Mark E, ATI Guns, John W, On-Site Firearms Training, Scott D, Kirk C, David Y, FBF Training, and William C, and David K. We want to say a huge thank you to the people who are currently pledging through Patreon. Your support helps us contribute to our goal of educating people on the importance of the Second Amendment, firearms education, mindset, safety, and training. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or Civilian Care Radio and or their employees. Viewer discretion is advised, especially on live shows. Tonight, folks, our guest we welcome for our first time is Mr. Steve Moses. He's under Helson Gracie. He's a BJJ Brown Belt and co-owner of Palisades Training Group. And before we say hello to him, I will pass on his bio to my lovely co-host, Tatiana. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Steve, for joining us. Steve Moses has been a defensive firearms trainer for over 25 years and is a licensed Texas personal protection officer instructor with 7 years of experience performing as shift lead on a church security detail for the Dallas-Fort Worth area Metro Church. He is a co-owner and director of training for Palisades Training Group, LLC, based in Dallas, Texas. He is a reserve deputy and spent over 10 years on a multi-precinct special response team. Moses owns multiple instructor certifications, including Range Master Advanced Handgun Instructor, Point-Driven Small Impact Weapons Instructor, Red Zone Knife Defense Instructor, Red Zone Adaptive Striking Foundations Instructor, Modern Samurai Project Red Dot Site instructor, and holds a BJJ brown belt and is an instructor at the Ralston Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, Tyler, Texas. Steve is a content contributor for CCW Safe and writes weekly articles on various subjects for interests to concealed carriers. Moses shoots competitively and holds an IDPA expert rating. He is an annual presenter at Range Master Tactical Conference and co-taught a block of Instructor with Palisades Training Group LLC co-owner Alan McPhee, covering armed movement and crowds during the conference held in March of 2020. To learn more about him online, visit www.ptgtrainingllc.com. He can also be found on Facebook. Welcome, Steve. Thank you. We're thrilled to have you on the show.
Well, I'm very pleased that you would have me, and I'm glad to join this esteemed group.
So we know that you have a pretty interesting origin story, a story that will resonate with a lot of our listeners as they either are on their journey or beginning their journey, especially with, the surge of interest in personal responsibility and not deferring that responsibility elsewhere, given everything that's happened during quarantine and in light of quarantine. Can you share that story with us all?
Oh, absolutely. The year was 1980. I lived in an apartment complex in Oklahoma City. It was a large complex. We received a notice from the management that there was an active burglar in the complex and to please be aware. So I thought, well, maybe I need to be ready for this. I had grown up on a farm and ranch, hunting, shooting, everything. So it was no big deal to me. I ran down to the local Gibson's, which was a kind of the equivalent of a poor man's Walmart. Bought a Ruger 357 Magnum revolver, loaded it, took it out to one of our farms, shot it, brought it home, put it up in the closet and said, well, somebody breaks in, I will grab this gun and I'll go deal with them. And the very next night, the dude actually breaks in. And so I had a plan. It wasn't necessarily a great plan, but I did have a plan. So I leaped out of bed, grabbed the gun, went out there, captured the burglar at gunpoint, held him for the police, and the police came. And I later was thinking about it, later being only a few hours later, that is that, oh my gosh, I didn't even know what the word tactical meant at that time. But if I had, I would have said I've made a huge number of tactical mistakes that could have very easily gotten me killed. And it was something that kind of preyed on me for the years to come. And I made it a point that if the opportunity ever presented itself, that I would get training in defensive shooting. At the time, this was in the early 80s, I was not aware of Gunsight Academy. I probably wouldn't have had the funds to go at that time. But in 1988, I did end up in Dallas, and I eventually came across the Texas Pistol Academy in 1993. So in 1993, I went out there, took their basic handgun course, and I was hooked. I then went ahead, completed all of their courses, intermediate handgun, defensive carbine, defensive shotgun, became an assistant instructor, became a primary instructor, and lo and behold, 26 years later, here I am. I've now taken over probably 100 weapons and tactics courses and clinics. I've acquired multiple instructor certifications, became a level 4 personal protection officer and instructor in Texas. I was the shift lead on a mega church security detail for 7 years in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I went to the police academy at age 47 and graduated from the police academy. I've been a reserve deputy constable now since 2001. Spent 10 years on a multi-precinct special response team, and I'm still a reserve deputy constable with the rank of sergeant with that same precinct at this time.
T, I thought you were going to follow up. I'm sorry. My bad.
I was like, why am I still on mute? We smashed the correct keys and miracles happen.
No
well,
worries.
thank you for sharing with us, because so many folks think that this is an insurmountable task to begin this and to reach a level of proficiency, unless you come from an origin at a very young age of military career, or you joined the police academy right out of high school. But to come to this world and these realities as an adult and to pursue them, throughout adulthood is something that is very important. So thank you for sharing that. These are all very attainable skills.
Well,
And we have a listener who just made a comment, just so that you know. Karen Farthing says, Steve Moses, lots of exclamation points. Excuse me while I fangirl over here. So you have some love from our viewers.
oh, I love Karen. She's my buddy.
So I will pass the ball to Lee. Take it away.
Well, I'm excited to have Steve here tonight. One of his fellow instructors with his training group was actually in my class this weekend and earned a patch on the drill for which details are conspicuously scant. Steve, for our listeners tonight, Steve has an extensive background in event security, church security particularly. And I know you're all familiar with what happened in Texas last year with the shooting that happened in the church there. And I'm going to step on some toes. Get ready, because here it comes. We all saw a number of firearms instructors immediately throw up church security training classes. Folks, firearms training and church security are not the same thing. Matter of fact, if you get to the firearms portion, you've probably done a pretty bad job at the other. So I'm stepping on even more toes tonight. So Steve, please address the topics of church security and how even church security differs from traditional event security. And what do people really need to know and understand about the topic?
Well, church security is kind of a different beast. The venue is such that the church wants to welcome people with open arms. And the church also understands that some of the people are coming in and there's a lot going on in their life, perhaps just from an emotional perspective. They anticipate people coming there a lot of times that are emotionally distressed, and they welcome those people. And they don't want to do anything to turn those people away. By the same token, they feel obligated, and which I believe they are obligated, churches that is they need to be able to protect those people. So there's kind of a fine line between being able to provide the church the security that it needs without kind of, asserting ourselves a little bit too aggressively. Most people that have their license to carry, that's what you need in the state of Texas, a license to carry in order to carry either concealed or openly. I feel like that is enough to qualify them after all they've been going to church all these years. They're very familiar with the pastor, the choir, the church attendance, the children's areas. And they think, okay, I'll just position myself. And then if something happens, well, I'll just wing it. And that is absolutely the worst thing that you can do. I'm very much a believer that you need to train your people. You need to have a plan. Church security starts at the perimeter. It starts in the parking lot. It starts before people can get into the sanctuary. It starts with educating greeters and other persons that, are volunteers for the church or, employees of the church, to be on the lookout for people that, okay, there's something that just does not seem right. I'm not sure what that is. It may not be anything, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to inform the correct people so the correct people can handle it. So a big part of that is training those people, making sure they have the ability to communicate with other people, the people that need to know. But again, like I said, being able to set up that outer perimeter so that, I hate to use the word, you can intercept people that really do have, criminal intent in mind, but I think there's no other way to do that. That's where they first need to be intercepted. They should never get into the sanctuary. If they get into the sanctuary, then the security director or the shift lead, or if it's just one person in the church, you've got to close in on that person. And it's just a matter of saying, hey, I don't think I'm familiar with you. I haven't seen you before. Can you tell me what brings you to church? Hi, I'm Steve Moses. How can I help you today? And start that interview process. And if someone's intent really is to, wreak violence on the church or some of its members, it's pretty difficult for them to conceal that. It's just very difficult to control all of that nervous energy. And that also gives a trained individual the opportunity to kind of close that distance. And in my opinion, and I really hate to, second guess anything that happened. And I'm glad in regard to the church and why some meant that the outcome was as good as it was. And again, I don't want to be super critical, but by the same token, that gentleman with a properly trained security team would have never made it in the sanctuary. And if somehow he had gotten in the sanctuary, he would have had one or two individuals in very close contact with him the whole time. The other thing that people that do church security think is that they've suddenly been empowered with magical law enforcement powers that gives them the right to do things that police officers in the same situation can't even do. And that's just a real good way to get yourself in trouble and get the church in trouble. And so, people that are on a church security team really typically don't have any more powers than just an everyday citizen, in the same position. And so it's a fine line between being able to, if I need to violently, aggressively deal with the situation and not make a mistake and get myself in trouble and the church in trouble. And so much of it is just, verbal ability and the ability to manage people. Good people skills in police work. I don't care what you do. Good people skills are necessary to accomplish things without them going, sideways. And I think that's especially true for church security teams.
You touched on numerous good issues, and I think one thing I want to make sure we address before we get off this topic, unless the other people have follow-ups. In a traditional event security, you can exclude people. You really can't exclude. I've been on security details for Supreme Court justices, former presidents, etc. And you set up a perimeter and you actually exclude people, and there's a limited access as to who actually gets inside the perimeter to the event. But when you add in the evangelical nature of a church or a house of worship, where is the line? How do you draw the line on who is excluded? Or I think you used it better, more of an interview process than an exclusion process. I like that phrase. And I'll just make one last comment on that. For anybody who thinks we're being critical of the guys in that church, they were put themselves on the line. They volunteered. One of them performed miraculously and another one paid with his life. And we need to make certain that we do at least pay homage to the fact that they were willing to put themselves on the spot for that.
Amen. Amen.
And sadly, we get to be the beneficiaries sometimes of seeing these unfortunate things happen to other people. That's one of the things that I don't know if y'all are familiar with Sean Vincent and Don West. Don is a unbelievable criminal defense attorney. He was involved in the Trayvon Martin, the George Zimmerman case. And he and Sean Vincent, they typically do a weekly podcast where they will talk about these cases in which things happened where otherwise good people, made errors and paid for them. And so the reason I bring that in, this event that we saw there is just another opportunity for us to see what happened to someone else. And then, okay, what are the lessons learned? It's not so much an opportunity to be hypercritical. It says, okay, what are the lessons learned? Anytime that we did any special response training, one of the things that we did afterwards, we did what was called a hot wash. And during that hot wash, we talked about the mistakes we made quite openly. And what we found is that in environments such as this, then it makes it so much easier to benefit indirectly through the experience of others. And so to that end, again, my hat's off to, the people that, they stepped up to it and they did deal with the situation. And then, okay, by the same token, let's look at what lessons could be learned and let's put those into play.
I think I'm up. Steve, so good to see you.
Nice to meet you, Tiffany.
seeing you at TACCon. I'm used to seeing you there every year.
I didn't get to hug you this year.
I know. That means you get 2 hugs next year. Along with everybody else. I may be busy. But my question stems from a topic that you've covered a couple of times at TACCon now, and that's the aging defender. And I think recently you had a session called Martial Arts for Middle Agers or something along those lines. So my question is, could you offer some tips or some quick words of encouragement for people who are maybe getting up in age or who have other physical challenges or mobility challenges, who might have assumed that personal defense training is beyond their ability?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for bringing up that topic. Yes, I'm one of those aging people with infirmities and disabilities and all that other stuff. And so actually, when I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I had already gone through 2 lumbar fusions in my lower back and, just got some other, injuries from just, past things I've done, some that were legit, some I probably shouldn't have been doing, but I'm paying for with injuries now. And that is, you're still very capable of defending yourself. Just because we're older or more vulnerable looking doesn't mean we're any less likely to be targeted by someone that maybe has something that we want. If anything, we're more likely because we are perceived more vulnerable. And so there's a lot of misperceptions out there as to, what the martial arts can do. I studied Taekwondo. I have a black belt in Taekwondo that I obtained in the 80s. And I was looking for all of that supernatural one punch, one power, one down and all that other stuff. And I'm like, I really don't. When am I going to get that power? Because I don't have it. I never felt that I was actually that prepared to deal with a street fight. And a lot of people look at that stuff and think, I don't think that stuff will work for me. I don't think I can do it. Well, then we kind of have to actually look, okay, what is probably going to happen if you're encountered by someone that wants to physically overpower you or strike you? Well, obviously, if they're going to strike you, they're probably going to punch you in the head. And if they're overpower you, they're probably just going to throw you to the ground. So it's not going to be some long, drawn out Steven Seagal type, battle with, kicks and, throws and wrist flexes and all this other stuff. It's probably going to be something where it's just like, okay, 2 people smashing into each other. So what I did was I made myself search for, okay, what are some of the things that can be done that would better prepare me for that? And that's when I stumbled across Craig Douglas. And this was a long time ago. I think this was 2005. And so I hosted Craig for ECQC in Ennis, Texas, back during that time. And then I'm like going, okay, these are the guys I want to hook up with. So anybody that teaches that same kind of material, I know Brian does. I know that Cecil Birch does, Paul Sharp, Chris Fry. The ability to, manage unknown contacts, okay, manage distance, and then indeed, if someone throws a punch at you, how to survive that punch, and then get into a position where you can bring another tool to bear. That's really all you need to know how to do. Now, again, I'm talking about from a standing position. So we're not talking about, strikes or anything. It's mostly defending yourself. Okay, get into a position where you have control of their upper body, you have control of both limbs to where you can then control maybe the closest arm. And, most of the people that's probably listening to us are concealed carriers, or I hope they are, or I hope they will be at some point. And that might be an opportunity to go ahead and get a handgun into play. Same thing is true if you get knocked to the ground. That's one of the things I really like about Helsing Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is that, there's several techniques that they teach that directly apply to that. That is, if you get knocked down, how to survive, how to tie them up, get them in a guard, or if you're in a mount position, get a seatbelt on them and then escape from that. And simple stuff like that can still be done regardless of your age. I've been teaching, and I teach quite a quite often. And I teach people that have, varied in age from 18 to 80. And we can take a 50 or 60-year-old or a 70-year-old person that's wanting to do that and bring them into our studio and show them, okay, how to defend themselves against a punch, how to defend themselves against ground and pound and get into a better position. And that's something that's very, very empowering. And then from that point on, it's like, okay, that's the start. Being able to bring, tools into play, I think are real important for anybody. But that's something I'd kind of like maybe throw that back to Brian and see what Brian thinks. But that's pretty much my spin on that.
So Brian coming up next, but I'm gonna jump in real quick and throw a quick follow up because I've been dying for a while to ask you about this. At one of those sessions that I mentioned from TACCon a year or so ago, you said something that really caught my eye, and I'd love to have you caught my ear, and I'd love to have you elaborate on it. You talked about the strategy that some folks have where they say, I'm old or I'm disabled or I'm out of shape. If I get attacked, I'll just shoot them. As opposed to, I can't do jujitsu every week or anything like that. I have significant physical disadvantages. So if I get attacked, I'm just going straight to guns. I'll just shoot them. I don't need all that other stuff. You took issue with that strategy, and I'd love to hear you kind of talk about that.
Well, the thing is that regardless of your skill level, I don't care how physical or how young you are, if you let someone get in too close to you where they're able to foul the draw or grab you before you're able to do that, you're already operating at kind of a reactionary deficit. For the most part, we're reacting. We don't have the ability to, preemptively say, okay, this guy looks bad, I'm just going to shoot him. We have to wait for that other person to do something. So the first thing I'd recommend always is to disengage, get away from there if you possibly can. But if that's not possible, okay, you need to be prepared to deal with a situation like that. And, I would say to these same people, okay, well, why don't you video yourself drawing your gun and show me how quick you can get that gun out of a holster and make a hit. And this is one thing that I really, I work on those skills a lot. And, I probably, if you tell me that, okay, I'm getting ready to, shoot a drill, so I'm going to stand there and I know what's going to happen. And you're going to tell me that when the timer goes off, that I get to go about the fastest I can get my gun out from concealment and hit, say, maybe, a 5-inch plate at 5 yards is going to be like 1.5 to 1.75 seconds. Okay, so that's almost 2 seconds with me knowing that I'm going to have a timer to go. I've got a go signal. Well, the bad guys, they use tactics also. So they're not going to say, hey, I'm getting ready to attack you 1, 2, 3 now. We don't have that opportunity. And so most attacks happen at relatively close range. I know that, you've been with Tom for years, and I know that you've listened to many of Tom's lectures. And one of the articles I wrote for CCW Safe was called 3 rounds, 3 yards, 3 seconds. And that was largely because the statistics seem to show that even when a competent concealed carry was involved, most incidents took place at 3 yards and 3 rounds were fired, and it was over in 3 seconds. And so what that tells you is that your 2-second draw, if you've got plenty of advance notice, is probably not going to cut it. And by the time that you factor in that you have to process what is going on, and also the fact that handgun rounds are not particularly, effective in stopping someone that is not willing to stop just because they got shot or shot at, the odds are very much against you that handgun is going to be the perfect tool every time. It won't solve all the problems.
Thank you. All right, Brian.
Uh-oh, Brian, we lost your mic. Go ahead, try Mark, Brian. Nope. Yeah, maybe unplug the headset. No, you'd have to unplug it, Brian, if the headset's not working. Yeah, we can't hear you, Brian.
So, Steve, I want to clarify something. This sub-second draw that everyone on the internet claims that they have, you mean that's not true? That there's no this sub-second draw? You mean you have to wait till there's actual legally justified stimulus before they do that?
Well, you don't have to, but that would be my recommendation if you don't want to go to, the poorhouse or prison. So, and so again, I mean, I appreciate the fact that the guys are, hey, I can do a sub 1 second draw. I think that's cool, and power to it. And I would encourage everyone to get your draw out as quick as you can, get training, get as quick as you can. But there's so many other things that go into managing this situation so that you actually have an opportunity to effectively defend yourself that go way beyond just that, sub 1 second draw.
So real quick, guys, while Brian was good, I don't know what happened. Brian, I was going to suggest maybe log out, and then do like we had Steve do. Oh, go ahead, try. No, still can't hear you. So what I was going to say was log out, reboot, come back. Just only open Google, and then it should clear it up. That always works. I don't know why, but so in the meanwhile, we'll come back to you. You'll be top priority as soon as you get back. So we have a question from our live chat. It's from Michael Garcia. He said, when you talked about hot wash, what do you think are some of the key elements for people to have open, honest discussions after an actual incident?
Well, I think a big part of it is to avoid the accusations and, any kind of implications that somebody screwed up or they were, an idiot or they should have done something different or I would have done that. I think the ability to talk about that without being, again, critical, it can come in different degrees. And there's harmful criticism and there's hurtful criticism. And so that ability to say, hey, man, I saw you do that. And for that other person, you should have gone to the right. Instead, you got to the left. You were completely exposed. Well, sometimes what we have to do is like, I don't think that happened, but that really happened. And then, have the strength of character to say, okay, tell me what I did. And then, you know what, if you completely disagree with their perception or their criticism, it's just, log it away. But one of the things I have noticed when as an instructor is that when a lot of times, we've ran our students through exercises and then we've told them that, hey, you did this, they'll deny it. And it's just like, okay, it's because it's like a personal affront. And so it just means that in order, I think, to have a good hot wash, everybody in there has to have, the ability to sit there and say, okay, I want to actually absorb this information and try to benefit from it and not take offense to anything anyone else says.
So real quick, Steve, I'd like to see if Brian's mic is working. Brian, you there?
Can you guys hear me, please?
Yay, we got you back. Okay. Before you come in, let's just let's get caught up here. We're going to go right to you, Brian. Once you're done with you, Brian, you have said your question. I'll pass it back to Tatiana for Karen's and Bill's comment. Bill has a comment. Karen has a question. And I was just going to say, Steve, the reason why you never learned the one punch powerful knockout, in martial art lore, the Dimmak, it's actually in Kung Fu. That's China, not Korea, with Taekwondo. So I just wanted to know you were a little off geographically. So that's all. So go ahead, Brian.
I told you I was a perpetual student. I'm always learning things.
Well, that's a good lead in. I was stalking you today, looking at your resume and reading some of your articles. And I saw a lot of diversity in your training. And I was curious what led you to diversify your training to such great lengths, and how does that help you as an instructor? That
was something I became interested in actually golly, back when I was very young, I started off with Japanese jiu-jitsu. I have a brown belt in Japanese jiu-jitsu. So I was listening to your explanations of the difference between Japanese jiu-jitsu and going, yeah, he's right. He's pretty much right. And so then I went into Taekwondo, and I felt what I would occasionally do in the gym is I would use jiu-jitsu on some of those Taekwondo stylists. And, they weren't expecting it, and it was kind of dirty. But by the same token, I'm like, okay, this is really effective. And so I became kind of a believer that a person that was maybe good at a variety of things might be better off than a person that is just excellent at one thing. And that's kind of been my experience. And then I was just so fortunate in terms of my training that I was able to do, the early shotgun training, the early carbine training. That was back in the early 90s. I was already interested in tactical training. I just hadn't found the venue for it. And that just kept on going. And so as a result, I believe that, one of my great passions is being an instructor. There's not many things, other than my family and everything that give me that same kind of I guess a high, if you will. And so what I like to do is I like to teach, and I like to connect with people. And if they have issues or problems, I like to help them find, not tell them what their solutions are. I like to help them find a solution. And in many instances, that solution is maybe that's going to be a shotgun. Maybe that's going to be a carbine. Not often. Most of our concealed carry stuff we can handle with a pistol, but I understand where, that has some benefits. But especially in terms of the software side, the tactical side, understanding what, might be the mentality of a criminal offender, what might be their motivation. Well, that's important because that tells you probably how they operate. And if you know how they operate, you can be looking for indications that, that might be what, or where they operate. Well, that's a place I need to be completely dialed in and very, very aware if I cannot steer clear of it. And I just have felt like that has made me a better instructor. We have a lot of our students now are people that are new to the game. Actually, many of them are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s and have done nothing, never even contemplated doing anything. It was first, kind of like, okay, we need to get a gun or we're going to lose our guns. And then, oh my gosh, COVID-19, the zombies are going to kill all of us. And so this is their first experience. And so my objective has been always is I want to help those people leave our classes with the competence and confidence to know that, okay, I now have a major say in any outcome with a violent offender that may occur. I don't just have to stand here or lay here and be a passive victim. And so that's kind of what has inspired me to do that. And I continue to do that. I mean, I've done tactical driving, I've done a lot of, mechanical breaching, high risk entries, all that other stuff. Most of that doesn't pertain to what concealed carriers do or should do, but it's all stuff that I think that's kind of given me some additional insight when maybe I teach a low light class or how to deal with a home intruder.
Very good. It's important to be a student as an instructor all the time too. I think it gives you that fresh approach. And that's something sometimes in the firearm community we miss, where you're just certified and you're going to teach. And I think martial arts instructors feel that we have to constantly go to class and improve and be a student and put the white belt on. Yes.
I'm a huge believer in taking classes. I'm doing the Range Master Shotgun Instructor class next month. Last December, I did Scott Jedlinski's Red Dot Instructor class. So I'm trying to get hooked up with a private class with Carl Wren. Lever gun classes by Lee Weems. That's on my very short list. And it's just like if something pops up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been interested in that. Well, I'm kind of now in a position where, hey, I can go do that easily. And before I would just have to make sacrifices. I went ahead and made those sacrifices. Every once in a while, Brian, I'd kind of look back and think about how much money and time I've invested in training. and kind of wondered, am I ever going to get any kind of a payback on this? And I really realized that financially, I never will, but in every other way, I'm going to.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
T? Oh, she may be frozen. She was having some trouble with her Wi-Fi earlier. Okay. No, we're up. Yep, you're there.
Am I back?
I wasn't sure. Okay.
A little touch and go with my Wi-Fi, so I'll see if I can get through this question. I'll click to mute and I will turn it over. So we have a listener question. Karen asks, sometimes we discuss in our ladies' classes is that you don't owe anyone nice. Being Southern, we girls are taught from an early age to be nice and not cause a scene. I'm putting quotes where she puts quotes in the questions, not for personal emphasis. Okay. So her question is, any advice on getting people away from nice, which will let an aggressor inside your space, and into keep your distance? What kind of tools do you use to teach that skill set? It's a great question.
That actually is a good question. One of the things that I think is important when it comes to females around males, I'll just say questionable intent. Doesn't mean necessarily bad intent, but you don't know them. We're not sure. We don't really feel like we want to know them at this particular time. Is letting them know that I see you without being inviting. And so, a big part of this is, okay, it's not so much I necessarily need to make eye contact, but simply, looking at someone's chest and shoulders, and then, slowly averting your gaze, but not turning your back, I think is probably, at least a start. One of the things is, I think if someone moves in on you, I know this sounds bad, but I'm a huge believer in giving a little bit of ground if I can. And my theory on that is I want to be able to say and actually do a little bit of a retreat, because if I step back and someone then steps in to close that distance, I think that's a means of kind of stripping some of the ambiguity from the situation. And then at that particular point, it's just like, hey, do you mind staying back? And of course, if that person is unwilling to stay back, well, that kind of tells you right then that, okay, I need to be, thinking about my plans and my options. How quickly can I disengage? What can I do? What are my skills and what are my tools? That may not be a very good answer, but, to me, because sometimes even guys get in that kind of situation where someone starts to crowd you. And some of that's just, a little bit of perhaps more of the testosterone thing. It's just something that you see. Actually, apparently quite a bit of that's been going on now with the COVID-19 situation, where, people feel like, okay, this person is not maintaining social distance. I have the right to say something, and they speak to them sharply, and the person takes offense. And so I don't mean to do a complete end around on you, Tanya, but my deal right here is to go ahead and make sure that they know that you've seen them. You're not giving them that look in the eyes that invites, continuous contact, and then you divert your attention apparently elsewhere, but by the same token, you don't turn your back on them.
All right, Lee.
That phrase, stripping the ambiguity from the situation, that is just pure gold right there. Absolute pure gold. Thank you, Steve. I think that's got stolen numerous times already tonight.
I stole it.
Yeah. If you look over in the live comments, I've seen like 7 stolens popped up on that. So I think you really struck a chord, because a lot of times the confrontation prior to force being used is very ambiguous. And, I think that is the biggest question, especially when it comes to non-deadly force, is to when to be able to employ that. The deadly force questions are pretty much written into statutes. It's the non-deadly and the avoidance part that becomes the ambiguous part. And I think what you're saying there is like giving ground. And if you give ground or you put an obstacle between yourself and someone else and they continue to close or they come around the obstacle, that's pretty well put a point on the subject right there.
I think absolutely, Lee. And I think a big part too is just, the physical posture, leaning back, getting your hands up, anything, looking back, opening your eyes, anything that indicates that, okay, I may be weaker than you. I'm maybe putting myself in a submissive position so that you understand I don't want to fight, etc. I don't think that's necessarily good, but I do think physically taking a step back anytime you can is like, okay, well, I attempted to disengage and he continued to encroach. And I think that's just a real, valuable skill to have. My wife and I, for 3 years, we lived in East Dallas. At the time, our brother-in-law had a kind of a ministry down there where they had a 3-story building. It had a loft. We lived in the loft, and they ministered to felons that had prior drug sentences that couldn't get a job anywhere. And it was a very neat little ministry, and they gave these people employment, gave them a place to live, gave them, a sense of meaning that they would not have been able to get otherwise. Well, that was the upside. The downside was it was in East Dallas, and it was in the hood. And I had 2 Labradoodles at the time, so we'd have to walk the Labradoodles in the morning. So as soon as you would go downstairs, the next building had a mattress leaning up against a building where 2 homeless men wintered the entire winter. And Dallas gets cold in the winter, but there were homeless people, and panhandling was just rampant. There was lots of drug activity, stabbings, murders, domestic violence in that particular. Well, I lived down there for 3 years. And so I operated in that area. I went to stores in that area. I went to gas stations in that area. And I had already, gotten a pretty good feel for how to manage unknown contacts via Craig Douglas. And so what I had an opportunity to do that about 30 times when I was down there. Actually, it was like 30 times because I was counting it. And what I found is that just that ability, to indicate, hey, sorry, can't help you. And then that hard, you need to stay back. Worked very, very well to, the people that had no, malignant intent, they would back off. And then the ones that were either, I don't know, perhaps had mental issues, or maybe, they were a little more persistent, they closed down, and you just hit them hard with a stay back, kind of drop your weight, bring your shoulders over and everything. And it was just like, okay, they were done. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to handle every situation, but again, when it goes to that stripping ambiguity, that's a big start, and it worked very well for me.
Excellent material, Steve.
Thanks,
I was signed up for your class at TACCon, the moving amongst people.
Our movement in crowds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was signed up for that class, and then Alan couldn't come, and we had to cancel the whole thing. What tips do you have that you could pass along to the listening audience on that subject?
Okay. Yeah, that was a class that we put together. It was something that we'd already learned how to do when we were doing and learning church security. And also we had to, of course, when we were on the team, you were, well, I won't use the correct term. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. You'd get stacked up very, very close to other officers in your stack before you'd make your entry with guns drawn, and then you would go and clear, houses with live guns with other officers in the house. And so our movement was very, very important. You had to, be cognizant of where that muzzle was at every time. And I've just seen so much incompetent gun handling when people don't realize that, I'm no longer on a square range. I can just draw my gun. The church deal at White Settlement, drove that home when I saw guns popping out of everywhere, and aiming in all directions, people getting muzzling like crazy. We'd already decided at that time that we were going to teach that class. So the main thing about that is you've got to be able to control your muzzle. That means you have to control your muzzle from the time you get it out of the holster so it doesn't cover you or anybody else. If you need to move, you need to move so that it doesn't cover anyone else. you have to be able to change that position that you're holding it in to, accommodate the environment. For instance, if I am, my favorite position is called position stool. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that, where basically, you bring your hands together, and it's probably hard to see, but you collapse that on your chest. Muzzle is aimed, probably 6 to 10 inches in front of your feet. It's a good position to move out of. But if you're in a church and moving across a pew, or you're in the children's area where there's children, obviously, you cannot keep that muzzle pointed in that direction because it's no longer safe. And so, adopting perhaps, basically a high port carry, or half Sabrina, full Sabrina, where basically you've got the weapon up here. You may need to go into low ready when you're in an area where you're about to accost another person. If you need to dash, over a long area where contact is not imminent, how to hold that gun down to the side so that you can pump your arms and, run at full speed. It was just basically going to be stuff like that, Lee. So the main thing is you've just got to be cognizant of where that muzzle is at all time. And so the thrust of that particular class was we were going to show people those various positions and then force them to move amongst each other using, red guns and blue guns, and then actually do a live fire segment where we would set up a number of friendly targets that they had to move around while they engaged the shoot target. In all of the classes, the train-up classes, it was very interesting seeing how many times that the friendly targets, once people were in live fire mode, were getting muzzled by other people. And again, you take somebody that doesn't have like good, gun handling characteristics. So, a lot of people are safety characteristics. A lot of people, trigger finger straight just means the trigger finger is along the trigger guard. It's just not on the trigger at that particular time. So you can just imagine what happens when you have your finger on the trigger guard or on the trigger, and you've got your gun at the horizontal and you're moving from position A to B. And without giving a lot of thought to it in prior training, I think there's a very high probability that somebody's going to get muzzled. And so that was kind of the objective of that particular class. Thanks for asking.
Tiffany.
I think it's my turn.
Yes.
Cool. So along the same lines, I'm going to ask you about another part of your coursework. One of your regular classes has to do with working in teams. So yes, I wanted to ask you about that because I usually get one of three reactions when I talk to folks about training for teamwork. It's they either say, well, my significant other doesn't have any training, so he or she knows I'll do all the work if something happens. Or my significant other and I both train, so we both know what to do. Or people say, well, why on earth would I ever need to work with a team? I'm not a police officer, or, something along those lines. So my question to you is, what is the utility of training for teamwork for the average, private citizen concealed carrier? And what are some of the revelations or the aha moments that you see that occur to people who train for teamwork that may not occur to folks who are used to training as a lone defender?
Okay, that's a good question. I see multiple benefits for that. One is that in the event that you're going to be on a church security team, I think that's a very critical skill. In most instances, active shooters are engaged by just one officer, but the ability, especially like in a large church or something, to be able to pair up with another officer, I think means that probably the team itself is going to be safer, and they are more likely to be able to get in there and effectively deal with the threat. So that's a plus. The second one is for the ones that say, okay, well, my wife, she trains and I train, or my husband trains and I train. I don't really see a use for it. Well, if something happens where you need to respond to an active intruder in your house, that ability to, I'm a big advocate. If there's nobody else in your house that you have to be responsible for, and someone breaks in your house, Well, then Alamo up in your bedroom, go over there and get in a hard corner, same side of the doorway. Ideally, you've already set up a bookcase horizontally that's full of books. That's cover, so that if someone wants to come in the room and visually get eyes on you, they have to get at least their head in the room. They can't clear the room from the outside. So being able right then is, okay, I'll cover, you make the phone call. Okay, I think that's an important skill. The second thing is if there's two of you and you have other people in the house, okay, that ability to coordinate what you're going to do, because you're not going to let those other people, you're just not going to let those other people take care of themselves. Okay, they're relying on you. You're responsible for them, so you're going to have to get to them. And the ability to go and get to that other person as a team, clear rooms. If you've got somebody in that same room, the ability to come in there and get two angles on the bad guy, etc., that's all good. And then finally, once you're in a team and you understand how you are assigned a specific area of responsibility, which can shift from position to position as you go from room to room, it really doesn't matter if the other person has a gun or not. You now have another set of eyes that can be positioned on areas that you can't see. And so just that simple, ability to say, hey, I'm going to go down this area right here, hang on to my belt, and I want you to watch that area over there and watch my back. And so just having another set of eyes, I think that's just another advantage of teamwork. And so that's kind of my selling point on that. In terms of revelations, we just taught a short clinic. It was called Solo and Team, Home, and Other Dwelling Clearing. So it was a 4-hour block, and we did, basically 3 hours of solo clearing and then 1 hour of team clearing. And what the people found in the team clearing when they were paired up is that their confidence level shot way up. Their blood pressure went way down, because when you go into a room, you're thinking about, I've got a responsibility for this entire room. So I've got, even if I go through the center here, I've got a 180 angle, and there may be other thread areas here and thread areas there. And having that ability to say, okay, I'm going to cover this area, you'll cover this area. What we do is, whatever way I go, you go the opposite way and cover that. And then we're going to team up every time we go in. And they just said their confidence level was so much better in all the force-on-force exercises that we did. The solo guys got killed a lot. The team players mostly killed the other guy. So I shouldn't be saying killed, but shot the other guy, So basically that's my thoughts on that.
Oh, thank you.
So Steve, you do a class that is contact distance defensive skills, close war. And I was interested, what are some misconceptions that the armed citizen has about close work like that? And what are some tools that you emphasize in that class that could be helpful for people outside of the gun?
Well, the tools that I would recommend are going to be a fixed blade knife carried next to the center line, OC, and being in the great state of Texas, a blackjack or a sap. So we just got that passed last September. Matter of fact, we did some training under Larry Lindemann, which was an excellent class in how to use those properly. And so those are some great tools. And the main thing there, Brian, is we're very much into, okay, we really don't expect you necessarily to, overcome this person using your physical skills. We expect you to survive whatever is thrown at you. Now, that doesn't mean we'll go ahead and we'll teach like a rear naked choke. And one of the reasons we teach that is that may be the only way that a concealed carrier can, actually restrain someone that is, actively combative and potentially dangerous. Somebody, hey, I can't just let this guy go. I've got to control this guy. This guy came in there and broke up a party and was trying to hurt people. I've got to hold it for the police. So we'll teach people how to do, a rear naked choke and how to do it properly, and, not how to apply it, overly long. But basically just the things that we're going to do, it goes all the way back to, okay, you've got to survive getting punched in the face. You've got to survive knocking the ground. And then from there, we covered, okay, how to then work the sap or a jack into it, how to work a knife into it, or how to manage someone with OC. In regards to OC, I'm a big fan of it. I did, was trained in the use of it at the police academy. That pales in comparison to what Chuck Haggard is doing. I attended, several of his blocks, and so one of my goals is to get his OC instructor certification, in 2020. But that's pretty much what we do, Brian. It's just a main thing. It's just, hey, we're going to give you some tools that will let you survive. We're going to, or I say some techniques, some skills, some principles, and we're going to give you some tools. And if you'll work on them, you'll train on them. And most especially, if you'll go to a BJJ gym and, work on the application of it, that's where you really kind of get, everything put together. I'm a big fan of taking classes, like I said, from, the ShivWorks Collectives guys. And then once you've taken those classes, I'm like going, okay, you really need to do some sort of continuous training. And I think, a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program is probably the best at this time.
Yes, sir. I agree.
So we have 3 great questions that have come in from our listeners. One is about a cadre level instructor question. The other is a return to the partners, specific about a partners question. And the last one is from church security. So given that we have about 10, maybe 15 minutes, if we push the limit a little bit, let's get these questions answered. Great. The first question we have comes from Tim Beatty. He asks, any advice for getting a student over a confidence issue? Their performance gets very iffy under the stress of competition.
Okay. All right. Any advice for getting a student over a confidence issue? Their performance gets very iffy under stress or competition? Yes. What I will do with a student like that is we will find a drill that is challenging, but something that can be, that can be done, if someone can just, operate adequately. So to that end, a lot of times we'll say, hey, we're going to go work on a specific drill. And we will do that drill, over and over and over, and just make little, suggestions. Okay, hey, try this, tighten this up and everything. One of the things that I have really found works well when I have someone that has a confidence issue is I really spend a lot of time working on, like, perhaps the specific techniques attributable to, say, something like on grip or, trigger control or sight alignment. And so, we'll focus on that. And the cool thing about that is that in a lot of instances, while I stand there and I literally talk that student through the drill, and I'll do all sorts of things, trying to come up with some sort of verbiage that student can connect with, or some sort of demonstration. And often that happens. And then when that happens, what I'll typically do is I say, okay, you remember what you just did right? See you do that again. And then it's just a matter of repeating that. And then it's like, okay, you know what? You've accomplished that. We're ready to go to another drill. And I will take them up to a drill that's a little bit more difficult, but again, one that they can accomplish and work on that. But that's typically, I don't believe in being critical. One of the things that I really try to do with a student that's struggling is I try to discount their self-talk. So I will say things, hey, don't focus on what you did. Let's focus on what we're supposed to do. So I'm not going to tell you what you did wrong. Let's talk about what we need to do right. If you tell a student you're doing this wrong, then they fixate on the wrong, and they have they seem to over and over do the same wrong thing again. So just saying, let's focus on the right things, and then, do things that they can succeed at, and then take them to, a little bit, stricter levels, or levels where a little bit more performance is necessary. That's my recommendation on that, Tanya.
Excellent. The next question we have comes from, make sure I get them all in here, applied performance shooting. And this is a return to the partners question. So the question is, how much do you think that training or the partner's training would carry over without being with the partner you took the class with? Do you work that in? So assuming that you have a relationship with your training spouse or significant training other in life or in the training world, because a lot of buddies take classes together too. And there's kind of a false sense of security that is established when you have that, when you've got that rapport, you're always with. Whether it's with a life partner or a USF, does that training translate when you're with a group of perhaps non-shooters or other shooters you're familiar with? Do you build that in?
Yes, I absolutely believe so. It's very easy to, convey to someone some of the basic principles of team movement. And so being able to say, hey, let's work on this, or we need to do this. Okay, I need you to stay here. I mean, say, okay, I need you to stay here and aim your gun that way or look that way. I'm going to move to this point. Okay, when I'm in a position to say moving, and then come to me. And just that ability to control your movement through even active communication at the time, I think that's very important. And the other thing is, I'm a big fan of, having skills, even if I think there's probably a fairly good chance that I'll never use them. And so, okay, I've got the skills now. So let's say, for instance, that I have those skills. I don't need them right now, but 6 months from now or a year from now, I do need them. Okay, well, you're in a position then that you can actually take what you've learned and teach much of that to someone else, probably not to the same degree and not as competent. They won't be as competent as you are, but just that ability to say, hey, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to start this training and all this other stuff. I think that's a plus. I've got a lot of skills in my toolbox that I haven't used for years. I probably never will use. I still know how to change a diaper. I still know how to make an omelet. I mean, there's things I haven't done for a long time, but I still have those abilities. And someday I may use them. And if not, it didn't hamper me any.
Fantastic. And then the last question that we have is from Karen Farthing on the topic of church security. She writes, I kind of subscribe to the everyone needs a job mentality. How do you incorporate non-armed church members into your response plan, RE, medical, evac, etc.?
Good question. When training church security teams, all of the initial meetings involve those persons. And I encourage, the teams to train on, at least a quarterly basis, and every single time include those people in that. We teach a church security class. As a matter of fact, we're actually teaching it in Virginia next month, where we'll spend the first day on the range, and then the second day we'll start off with a two-part PowerPoint presentation, which includes everybody in the church that will have anything to do with church security. And that, again, that includes the greeters, the people, the ushers, just virtually anybody and everybody, the people in the child care area. And so we include those people and we make them a part of the plan. And once we're able to do that, then they seem to be pretty responsive. And the other thing is, it gives them a sense of comfort, especially when they hear about, some of the stuff that's happened in white settlement, some of the stuff that's happened elsewhere, and some of the stuff that's probably going to happen in the future. So pretty much everyone has a vested interest, in their security. And if you include them and you talk to them and you answer questions that they may have, and your answers make sense to them, they tend to be pretty responsive.
We got a couple of just random contributions from our listening audience. So I just want to read those off before I circle back to Tatiana. Shannon Carl Pable says, hi guys, tuning in a little late. Great info. My husband is listening over my shoulder. He said he'll crawl into the corner and cry like a little girl during home invasion. I need more training. Let's see. Strummer Stanley says, hey Steve, Strummer from Texas. We are doing when are we doing part 2? ?
Oh, Strummer is cool. Strummer is a young man. He did our team tactics course with his dad. And so his dad, hey, Brad, hey, Strummer, got him in early, and Strummer excelled in that particular class. And he shot up some of my role players quite soundly.
All right. I will pass that back to Tatiana for the 9:15.
So this is where we go around and let everyone know what's going on with what's new with you and what's coming up. Brian, I'll ask you first. What's on the ticket for you in the next couple of weeks? Man.
So thankfully in June we get back on the range. We'll be running classes then. You can find me at lakevet.com. And proud to announce that Scott Jelinski just made us an endorsed instructor for his red dot system. So be doing a red dot class, a one-day red dot class for everybody. So we're pretty excited. Be going, if you'd like to host me, of course, we always can travel too. So lots of good stuff coming up. We're doing a mindset and pepper spray class together. So the proactive mindset. It's going to be a busy summer, I hope. Smaller classes, but we look forward to getting back to teaching because I sure miss it.
That is the truth. I can't wait to go back too. I'm kind of, dry fire is awesome, but I need some range time.
Yeah. I'm Grandmaster dry fire now.
Right? I know. Like we could totally rock that up. I've got the target on my Tiffany, what's going on with you?
So, the Citizen Safety Academy is interesting circumstances. I feel I've been doing a program for years called Guns 101, free Q&A session, mostly for new guns. And what we're doing next week on Wednesday is we're going to take that. So anybody who knows new shooters or people who may be kind of interested, hesitant, curious about guns, Guns 101 online. We're going to use Zoom. That's Wednesday. I think that's the 27th. You can learn more about that at citizensafety.com. Just click on our calendar. Everything is posted there. We're really excited about that. When we first announced it, we got a bunch of signups almost immediately. So I'm hoping that those people show up and have a lot of questions for us. Because it was mentioned earlier, with what all's going on, there's a lot of new gun owners out there. And I've been seeing some questions online that reminded me, hey, these people, they need some reliable resources to go to. And so we're hoping that we can spread the word, Guns 101 online. Citizen Safety Academy also is doing a lot of instructor training coming up. We've got 2 pistol instructor classes, one in July and one in September. We're doing a rifle instructor class in September. Wait, no, our other pistol class is in August. I'm confused. It's all on our calendar. And we're doing the NRA CCW class. We're doing the instructor training for that one as well. Let's see, Range Master. So last week or a couple of shows ago, somebody was asking about TACCon. I am really, really sad that we didn't have TACCon this year, but for anybody who's not sure, TACCon has been posted for next year for 2021. It is going to be in Dallas. Registration is open. Please go and register. We're already more than half full because we had a bunch of people who just transferred over from last year, but we do still have space. So Rangemaster Tactical Conference, March of 2021. You can learn more about that at taccon.info. And I'm going to throw something else out there that maybe folks might not have heard about yet. I am helping out. I'm kind of, in the background, which is actually where I prefer to be. But behind the scenes, I'm helping out with 2 friends of mine, Craig Douglas of ShivWorks and Jeff Gonzalez with Trident Concepts. They are teaming up to offer a brand new conference. It's coming up this December in Austin. It's called the 12 Labors Conference. And Craig's unofficial tagline is that this conference is all about what all men want to do better. So, so if that piques your interest, head on over to 12labors.com and learn more about it.
Awesome.
Outstanding. So if everyone listening would do us all a solid and go make sure you reshare the new Shooter 101 program, the new Gun Owner 101 program on your social medias. We all know too many people who just purchased a firearm for the first time, and us as instructors, we can't reach them all. So the more they hear from us reputable and reliable resources, the better. So go make sure you reshare those posts from Tiffany so that those programs get full and they are learning from the right people. So I encourage you to do that. Lee, what's up with you? Other than the fact that I need a lever gun badly and I need to come hang out with you even more.
Everybody needs a lever gun or a 4, 5.
Yeah. I want it. It's like my Santa wish for this year is I got to get a lever gun. Got to get.
Well, the first weekend in June, I have a sold-out lever gun class in Culpeper, Virginia. That's Saturday the 6th. Baraka got the last spot, so everybody blame him if you didn't get in. But you can get on the wait list just in case something comes open. The registration for that is through the Justified Defense Concepts Eventbrite page. The very next day, Sunday the 7th, I'm teaching critical pistol skills there in Culpeper. Tiffany Johnson is a recent graduate of the critical pistol skills class. It's a very, very, very challenging set of material. We do everything freestyle, both hands, to include drawing, reloading, malfunction clearing. Then you get to do all that strong hand only. Then you get to do all that support hand only. And I think you'll learn some things about gear placement and some techniques and tactics that will make you rethink some things. Tiffany, you have a quick comment on that?
I agree. You will definitely come away from it rethinking your gear setup for sure.
There's a great video on Tiffany and Akil's social media of Tiffany's performance in that class, and it was just outstanding. Which, by the way, and Tiffany came up as a topic of discussion in the class I taught this weekend, and I made reference to the Georgetown law veneer and the Memphis. And the person was just made. You mean there's another part of Tiffany? I'm like, oh, you just have no idea. Middle of June, I think June 14th, I'm going up to Dahlonega, Georgia. There's this guy called Brian Hill.
Yeah.
And I'm going, and so now I will have an excuse for every shot that I miss from here on out, because I'm going up to see Brian for that day. And I hope to have some classes announced for the later part of the year coming up soon. I'm starting to look at some stuff for scheduling wise. If you're in the Southeast and you would like to host a class, please contact me at lee@firstpersonsafety.com. And we may be getting back out to Texas at some point this year for specifically requested lever gun and some more pistol classes. Maybe we can team up with Mr. Steve Moses there. But yeah, hopefully we'll have some more stuff coming up this year.
And before we get to, go ahead, Tati.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to jump in there because I rarely get the opportunity to one up Lee Weems. But Lee, you're going to Brian, but I am having Brian come to me. Thank you very much. Citizens Academy is hosting Brian Hill. We're super excited about it. That's October 2020. If you're in the Middle Tennessee, North Georgia area, come to train with Brian because he's awesome.
Thank you, my friends.
So, Lee, before we get to Tatiana, and of course, we always hold our guest the last on what's going on. So, quick question for you, Lee. Alan and I, as you know, are in your lever gun class 2 Saturdays from now on June 6th. That gun is new. I have not sighted it in. Do I need to bring a sighted rifle to your class? ?
Well, I'm glad you put the question mark in there because we'd have never known it was a question. If you have it sighted in ahead of time, that would be preferable. I will be sending out an email shortly to all of the attendees in the class with some pre-class info. But yeah, if you got it sighted in, that would be great. I'm really excited that the lever gun class in Virginia sold out, and I'm getting a lot of requests for it out of Texas right now, and I've gotten some out of Oklahoma, which is, I gotta say, it's the one thing in my repertoire that gets the most conversation and sells the least.
Oh,
Everybody loves to talk about the lever gun, and they want to know all about it. Probably I average at least an email a week on people with questions about the lever actions, and the class just does not sell.
wow.
It just doesn't. I know Virginia's got political things going on that are driving it up there, and I had gotten so much radio traffic out of Virginia that thankfully the Justified Defense guys wanted to host it and make a go of it. But it still grabs Americans' attentions to see the lever gun, but it does not sell. It's not a carbine class. It's not a very high round count class. So, folks, if you're interested in it, work on getting together a group of like-minded people that are very interested. And if I will come do the class, but we just got to have enough people to make it worthwhile. It kills me on the bottom line of the business portion of this to take a range date and say this is going to be lever gun, and then just don't get enough people for the class to go, and that's a date that I could have used for something else. And I'm sorry, I don't want to be taking up too much time on the.
No worries. No worries. But my suggestion, folks, is if you guys are John Wayne fans, Old West fans, just start off a thread like that, and that's how you get the hook in there.
That's actually one thing that I talk about in the class, and I think I said it when I was on the show before. Everybody always goes straight to John Wayne, but all the guys that shot at John Wayne were shooting the lever guns too.
That's true. All right, Tatiana, what do you got going on? Where can people get a hold of you?
Sure. So there's some fantastic developments and things happening with A Girl and a Gun. So I encourage you, I won't take up too much time talking about those, but follow us on social media. Make sure you're following Women in Guns, which is one of our Publisher Network resources, as well as AG Nation for some fantastic things that are on the horizon for that organization. The DC Project continues to do great work across the country, and many states are stepping up and doing fantastic work, even despite the COVID experience, to organize and work with existing pro-Second Amendment groups within our state. So that's been a fantastic as well. The DC Project is a fantastic resource for information. It is nonpartisan, so please look into it. Donate if you can to support the efforts. It is a fantastic program with an amazing community and network nationwide. My own training online has been going fantastic. Lots and lots of online private lessons, lots of one-on-one, one to a family. Everybody's sitting in their living room and I'm on the TV, which is a little odd at first, but we all settle in quite nicely. Having those whole family discussions about what does it mean to be coexisting safely in a household with firearms, children, multi-generational experiences. So those types of conversations have been going very, very well for people across the country. And then I've got some classes that are still on the books coming up that haven't been impacted by COVID. We hit Nashville with some great classes. I think I get to hang out with Tiffany at one of them. I'm super psyched. At the Royal Range, I've got a handgun accuracy and defensive handgun class at the end of August. I will be, assuming the Live Free or Die shoot is still a go, I'll be in Keene, New Hampshire in September, Culpeper, Virginia for defensive handgun and handgun accuracy, woohoo, in September and as well. And then we'll be in Salem, Connecticut, Beaumont, Texas, Decatur, Gainesville, San Diego, and Georgia before the year is out. So it's going to be a good way to wrap up 2020, and I couldn't be more excited about it. You can find me online at TatianaWhitlock.com.
Perfect. And Steve Moses, where can people get a hold of you? What you got going on? What you got coming up?
Well, my website is ptgtrainingllc.com. We've got a couple of classes coming up on June 6th in Big Rock Gun Club. It's south of Canton, Texas, about 55 miles south of Dallas. One class is our basic defensive pistol clinic. It's a great class for persons that are new to concealed carry. We're going to be simultaneously teaching a class out there with another one of our instructors, one Guy Schnitzler. It is a multi-discipline class. We're going to spend 90 minutes on refining the draw stroke. We're going to spend 90 minutes on gun grappling. We're going to spend 90 minutes on shooting drills that put a great premium on both speed and accuracy, and then finally finish up with a 90-minute clinic on some of the fundamentals that homeowners should know about dealing with a home intruder, options they have, choices they can make, and even a few techniques on how to, do both a stealth clearing and a dynamic clearing in the event of an emergency. Still doing a lot of writing for CCW Safe. I write, like I said, a weekly article for them that covers tactics, training, concealed carry issues. I try to cover everything that I think would be of interest or should be of interest to concealed carriers. I have been doing some writing for the Firearm Trainers Association. The person that is kind of the face of the Firearm Trainers Association is Larry Vickers. There are some great people that are founding fathers that would include Ken Hackathorn and Dave Spalding. And the three main guys there at FTA and CCW Safe, they're great guys. Stan Campbell, Mike Darter, and Kyle Sweet. And I've known Kyle pretty much his whole life. I actually came and saw him in the hospital right after he was born. So Kyle's family, Kyle's cousins. And so it's been kind of a unique thing is that our paths kind of went their own way and then, came back together, about 3 years ago. And so I really encourage listeners to check out CCW Safe. And as much as anything, look at the bona fides of these guys and what their backgrounds are. Their national counsel is Don West, and Don West is just a freaking rock star. So that's pretty much what's on my horizon, Baraka.
All right. Well, good. Now strap yourself in because we've got rapid 2.0 questions. Are you ready? They are brief questions, just one answer. That's it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Is competition a good augment to defensive shooting?
Absolutely.
Least favorite skill to practice?
Weekend.
Biggest training myth?
You only need to learn how to run handguns.
Striker fire, double action, or single action only?
Striker.
Appendix or strong side hip?
Yes.
In the home, pistol, rifle, or shotgun?
Pistol.
One thing you carry every day other than your gun?
Pepper spray.
Red dot or irons on a pistol? Scott's going to choke you. So Scott's going
to... Irons.
3 books that you recommend that are must-reads, don't have to be firearms related.
Leadership and Training for the Fight by Paul Howe. Straight Talk on Armed Defense. Many authors there. That was edited by Massad Ayub. And a little-known book called Red Zone Prime by Jerry Wetzel out in California. Jerry is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he is a phenomenal instructor, works with Paul Sharp. And the thing I like about Jerry is he has to work in California where those guys do not have access to firearms. So they have to take a little bit more gentle approach than even the rest of us in terms of dealing with, persons that may not be necessarily good guys.
Yes, makes sense. And last question, please recommend one peer, trainer, coach, or fellow instructor not on the panel. Just one.
That would actually be Hani Mahmood. Hani Mahmood is a longtime friend of me, a longtime friend of mine. He's a full-time firearms training academy instructor and a very knowledgeable guy and has a lot of unique knowledge that he's very good at conveying.
Awesome. Thank you. So, folks, strap in for a few more. We have a few announcements coming up, and then stick in for final thoughts. So folks who have inquired about our CCR t-shirts, we're doing currently a pre-order like we always are every 3 months. $20 each. Send us $20 to www.paypal.me/CC radio. Please put in the notes section your size and address. Currently in stock, we have 2 mediums, 4 larges, and 3 XLs. To become a corporate sponsor or to advertise on the show, please send me an email to baraka3@gmail.com for details. Please share and subscribe. Leave your feedback by commenting at the bottom of our YouTube video. And please hit the subscribe button and the alert icon so you know when we go live. If you're watching through Facebook, head on over and check out the links here in our show notes. Just go to google.com. Type in Civilian Carry Radio, and you will find our main home on firearmsradio.tv, where we have all of our links. We are on Twitter, on Instagram, our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and please give us a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. YouTube has a small version of our show notes, but it's truncated due to the limited character count. So please go over and check out our full notes. We have 9 of our 137 audio podcast stations listed that play our show. Basically, go to anyone type that you listen to your favorite flavor of podcast and type in Civilian Carry Radio. We have iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, On Speaker, Player FM. And folks, I know it's hard because a lot of you guys listen to the podcast, but it would be really help us if you guys went to iTunes and left us a good review. That would be really helpful. That'll give us a little more exposure to the mainstream, and we'd really appreciate that. Also, check out our show notes for our industry partners: Aridus Industries, ATI Guns, Battle Comp, Big Tex Outdoors, Dark Angel Medical, Dark Star Gear Holsters, Fire Clean, Trident Concepts. Please join us next Wednesday, May the 27th, for our 145th episode. We're bringing back Miss Lou Ann Hamblin, LEO, owner of Luca Tactical Training, with guest co-host Mr. Marshall, legendary lawman Chug Haggard. And behind that, we have Julie Golub. Behind that, we have Kristen DeBucker, and we have a whole host of folks behind that. We are lining up currently right now. We have gotten a professional counselor specifically to combating and who has been dealing with the last 15 years women and victims of women who have been abused. And we are currently working on that behind the scenes right now to set up a multi-part series with women who have been through those things, and we're going to kind of tear that out a little bit. You want to speak to that? I know I kind of dropped that in your lap a little unplanned, Tatiana, but just to give a general idea of how we're kind of structuring that so people can get a little idea of that.
Sure. There's obviously quite a bit of material to be covered. There's quite a bit of material to be covered when we're talking about women and violence against women. And the way we're going to structure this series, we're going to sprinkle these out over a couple of months. We're bringing in people that have stories that are relevant to kind of the journey and progression through from a dating experience or the courting experience, and what are things that you should be aware of, or what are some red flags, what are the patterns of behavior, and how do these things escalate through the life cycle of a relationship with an abuser, and what are the psychological effects, the skills, the tools, the common pitfalls that can be avoided. I think we all, if we haven't experienced this with a loved one or have experienced this ourselves, if we'd only known, or if those loved ones of ours had only known about a couple of little things, could they have had a different outcome? And the point of the series is to provide those dialogues, pose those stories, give those reference points, and have viable, credible people as resources to field and offer solutions and opportunities to disengage in a safe way before it escalates to a point where we need to use a lot of the material that we talk about on this show.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tatiana. This is something that is very dear to our heart. After reading Gavin DeBecker's book, I was amazed to see that the statistics on people, but specifically women and children, is, it's really bad, you all. And there's a lot of people suffering in silence. And after we did our first show on this some time ago, so many people contacted me, and it is something that I definitely want to contribute to and get people help that need it. And we need to put an end to this. And it starts by finding these people, getting people help, getting them out of the situations, and facilitating ways that they can get out of those situations safely and prevent them from even happening. So, folks, a huge congrats to Tatiana for 1 year at Civilian Carrier Radio as of yesterday. Thank you, Tatiana. We are so honored to have you on our show, and we continue to add a beautiful component to our show. And we love you, and we're so glad to have you here. So also, folks, back to what Tatiana was saying, go to www.dcproject.info. She check it out. You need support there. Please donate. Please check out it's a project to support women and men in the firearms industry as discussed by pressing issues of today. They present that to the legislation people down in DC, and we really appreciate it. Let me see. The only other thing that I had to say today was one of the best pieces of advice I was given in my life was by one of my former managers. And he said, anytime you have something sad and something good, start with the sad, finish off with the good, so you leave in a better mood. So the sad is I would like to send my condolences to Brian and his wife, Shelly, who Brian lost his father-in-law and Shelly, her father. So may he rest in peace. May God be with him, and prayers out to you, your family, and everybody who loved him. And then on the brighter side of things, happy birthday to Brian's beautiful wife, Shelly, today. She's celebrating her birthday. So guys, make sure you go by, give her lots of love, and because we are happy and the world is a better place with her. And with that, I give the final thought to Tatiana.
Well, thank you, Steve, for all of the work that you do and for joining us this evening. I have a whole other set of questions that I will be sending to you, and I hope to be able to have an opportunity to take some of your training coming up, if not at TACCon, elsewhere. So you are on my hit list of people to go and hang out with on the range. So I look forward to that very much.
Let me unmute him. Good. So you can reply.
I look forward to seeing you again, and I appreciate your kind words. And again, thank you to all of you.
No, not yet, Steve. Not yet. You get the last word. You got to hang in.
I get the last word. I thought that was my last word.
You're the last.
Right.
You get You get the last because you're our esteemed guest. All right, Tatiana. Thank you so much for your final thoughts, and let's go to Tiffany. Tiffany, final thoughts.
So again, Steve, thank you for joining us. And I will just share, one of my favorite things about Steve as a trainer is that he appeals to all experience levels. Those of you who know me know I'm a big fan of training, good, high quality training for beginners. It's really easy to hang out a shingle and try and do the super fancy classes where you jump out of helicopters and do forward rolls. But the instructor who can help a new shooter, someone who's scared, someone who's intimidated, someone who's fearful, someone who has violence in his or her past, is a real asset to our community. And that's where 90% of our good work gets done. It's only the top of the tip of the iceberg that is interested in jumping out of flaming helicopters. Most people just need to understand how to work this thing that I just bought because I was afraid. So thank you, Steve, for opening your expertise to people who are brand new to guns and people who may need a little bit more patience. And there's a lot of people in the chat who I want to commend for the same reason. Tim, Ryan, there's a bunch of folks who are really, really good with beginner shooters, and also on the panel. And Lee, y'all are some of the best. So I just want to reiterate and thank you again, Tatiana, for giving us the shout out for Guns 101. But I want to reiterate to everybody here who has any level of expertise, whether you are formally dubbed as an instructor or not, please, please, please do your part to make sure that all of these new gun owners are set on the right path, because this is sort of do or die time for folks who are new to guns. And now is the turning point. This is where people either set foot down the wrong path or the right path, training wise, and just in terms of the culture of gun ownership. So that's my spiel. And again, thank you, Steve. And it was really great to see you. And I look forward to seeing you and training with you again soon.
Thank you,
and I know we're already running over, folks, but I got to just add one little thing to what Tiffany said. It is so important. Folks, if you see people, I have literally seen over the last few months, so many of my new friends that were not gun owners that I never even thought they would own a gun say, I just got my concealed carry permit. I'm like, cool, let's get you in a training class. They're like, I already took it. I'm like, no. That's not what I meant. Take the time, be patient. Explain to them that they need practical training, that they need to understand the fundamentals, that they need to learn to draw from a holster. They need to know when to shoot, not to shoot. The whole gambit starts first before mind. Like we talk about, mindset is the most important. If you had to go to the gun, you missed a lot before that. And with that, let me pass it to Brian. Final thoughts.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It was good to see you. I hope we get together and train someday soon. It's a hard time in America for all of us right now. We've all been hit with certain things. We have to get through this the only way we know how, and that's we have to not vanquish our grief, but we have to kind of overcome it, and we have to become stronger. So it was indeed a pleasure to talk to you tonight. As we say in jiu-jitsu, which means never give up. And we'll hold that thought. And to my loving wife that we're separated tonight, happy birthday. It's been the toughest year of our life. I appreciate you mentioning that. But I love you. I miss you. And we'll get through things together. And I appreciate all the support from the firearms community, especially with everything. And it was just a pleasure. Thanks for the honor and thanks for the time, Steve.
Thank you, Brian.
Mr. Lee Williams, final thoughts, brother.
First, I've got something I want to say about Steve and then a general comment to finish up. Folks, look at Steve's group, Palisades Training Group. Look at the quality of people that he has surrounded himself with. The people that are part of his group, Alan McBee, Guy Schnitzler, Guy won a patch in my on my drill this week, Hanny Mahmood, Julie Thomas, all on their own accord, top flight instructors, and he's got them all together there in a group that are going to be able to offer you different perspectives, different skill sets, and that's just to have that many people of that quality teamed up providing training is just phenomenal. That I had a guy in my class this weekend in Texas asked me about who to go to for a carbine class out there. I said, dude, if you're not taking everything Palisade offers right here in Dallas area, then do everything they've got before you worry about going to somebody else. So just high praise for that, especially on the amount of attention that Steve and his guys give to problems other than the gun problems. To me, that is just a super high mark of quality training when people are realizing, look, folks, shooting's fun. The shooting part of the training is fun. It's everything else that is just so much important. And Steve and his guys do such a top-notch job of that, and that's why I so highly recommend Brian as well. One thing I want to talk about here, just in general, we did a breakdown of our calls for service from March the 1st of this year through yesterday's date, and we compared that from March 1st of last year through the same date. And our calls for suicide attempts and threats just in our area are up 44% over this year from last year. There's lots of people out there that are hurting. They're in despair. They're feeling isolated. They're worried, they're stressed out with everything we know that's going on in the world today. So here's a phone number. If you're listening to this show tonight or later on downloading it, and you're having problems and you're not alone, a phone number you can call is 1-800-273-8255. That is 1-800-273-8255. There is help out there. Thank you.
Well said, Lee. Thank you so much. And before I go to Steve, our guest, last thoughts for myself. You have to just hear me real quickly, or Steve, and then off to you. Folks, I would like to first of all thank our esteemed panel. Thank you so much, Tatiana, Brian, Steve, Tiffany, and Lee, for your time, for your continuously giving back to our community and the world, and constantly trying to help who, where, when we can, and uplift others, it means the world to me. And I thank you guys. I'm eternally grateful from my heart. I thank everyone in the live chat tonight that came and spent your time with us, for your contributions, both by being here and your time. The most important thing that we can give anyone, your effort, your questions, and your participation. It warms my heart. It makes me happy to see and bring our community together in a tighter knit place and to support each other constantly, folks. So thank you so much. And the last thing I leave you guys with is, please, folks, put the judgment aside. Let people be who they are. Accept people as they are. Do not try to change them. Understand that you have no idea what people have been through their lives and what their finished product are. A lot of people have survived a lot of horrible things that they will not share because of too much pain, because of too much grief, because of too much shame. And it's not your place. Just accept people as they are, and then if you don't have something nice, don't say it. Just leave it alone, folks. You don't need to judge anyone. The only one who can judge us is God, in my opinion, as a Christian. It's only He knows our true hearts and our true intentions. So what I'm saying to you all is, be good to each other. Help who, where, when you can, and uplift others, because that is what matters. That is what's important more than anything in the world. And with that, I pass it to you, Steve.
Well, I very much appreciate y'all having me on this. This is a huge honor and a great privilege. And I mean, it's one of those things that when I was first asked, I was like, sure. And I'm like, I'm nervous. I see the way that y'all have conducted yourselves and how professional you are. And it was, very important to me to try to kind of hold up to that same standard. So I have done, the best that I can, but I very much appreciate a group of peers like y'all that realize that we're not about just the gun. That is something that, it can very much be, something of pleasure, a hobby, etc. But for the most part, it's just another tool that can get us into so much trouble if we misuse it, or we think that because we have one on our person that we now have some powers, or we're obligated to do some things that we really, some things we just need to avoid. And again, it's just an honor and a privilege to, share the screen with all of you. And I thank you so very much. And I can't wait to see all of you all again next year. So again, thanks for having me.
It was our honor and our pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you at TACCon. And with this, folks, I leave with two of my very favorite people and two very awesome people that are dear to a lot of people on the panel here. And our first comes from Lynn Givens. And the words of our good friend and mentor, Lynn Givens: I do not carry a pistol so I can impose my will on someone else. I carry a pistol so someone cannot impose their will on me. And the reason that's important is that's not just with pistol. That means with martial arts. That means with anything. It's important that you understand that you need to protect yourself so that other people can't impose their will on you. It's very important. Second one is for me, and what I encourage people to do if they're going to carry is to carry as an act of love. It is not because of fear or hate or anger, but we carry because we love life, we love our families, and that is something worth protecting. That's by Mr. Tim Reddy. And thank you, Tim. That one resonates so deeply with me, and I love saying it every time. And I hope that everyone who hears that truly understands that that's what it's about. So folks, good night. Please take care, stay safe, be positive, remain vigilant. We'll see you guys next week. God bless. Good night. Thank you. And we are